How many women spent their entire lives believing they were just too sensitive, too emotional, lazy, disorganized, or somehow failing at life when they actually were neurodivergent? For many years, women were overlooked, misunderstood, misdiagnosed, or missed completely. They've learned to mask, people please, overachieve, and push through exhaustion while silently wondering why everything seemed harder for them than it did for everyone else. And welcome to Hidden in Plain Sight, the podcast about the parts of ourselves people don't always see: the overthinking, the growth, the burnout, the healing, the humor, and the everyday experiences that make us human. I'm Extrovergent, ADHD brain, and today we're talking about late diagnosis in women, masking, identity, self-discovery, and what happens when someone finally gets the answers after years of searching. Joining me today is Sarah Buckley, founder of The Chronic Confessions, a free community support group. Sarah was born with chronic illnesses and spent much of her life being misunderstood and misdiagnosed before finally gaining a deeper understanding of herself and her experiences. Sarah, welcome to Hidden in Plain Sight. And my first question is,
Thank
why
you.
were so many women overlooked or missed entirely when it comes to conditions like ADHD, autism, neurodivergence, or any mental health condition?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me as a guest.
My pleasure.
Secondly, I can only speak, I want to just put a disclaimer out there that I can only speak about my experience. But I've done so much research about this, and other people have talked about this too. And first, I was listening to Tamsin Fidel, who I believe has her own podcast. And one of the very first things she said was women's health specifically did not even begin to be studied as a separate entity than men's health until the
Mhm.
1990s. And I'm
Wow.
like, okay, well, that basically just explains it right there, right? Because I was born in 1978. So then I listened to a lot of podcasts, and Mel Robbins was talking about how, like, if you're between the age of 35 and I believe 70, don't quote me on that, but if you exhibit, XYZ behaviors, you should go get checked and see if you have, neurodivergence of some kind. So with those two things being said, I really just think medicine and diagnoses are way behind when it comes to women and how they present, and especially when it comes to neurodivergent, whether it be ADHD or autism or both ADHD. So that was my experience as well.
Perfect. Do you think that there are stereotypes that cause people to miss signs?
Oh, absolutely. Because even like with chronic illness and mental illness, there are so many symptoms that overlap. And so that's why I think I was misdiagnosed for so many years, because I fit into a certain category of symptoms that could be, bipolar, borderline, ADHD. And so once I got diagnosed with one thing, it's like, well, why do we want to dig deeper? We found your problem. Well, that wasn't the case for me. So that's also the case with a lot of chronic illness as well. There's so many autoimmune diseases that have the same symptoms. So it's really hard to find what your actual diagnosis is.
And I can definitely see why that would be challenging because I feel many women don't lack symptoms. They become experts at hiding them. Is that something that you would agree with?
Absolutely. We become, the high achieving maskers, as I like to say, because we didn't have another choice. You just put on your bright, happy, smiley face and get through the day, because that's, as women, as that's kind of what we're taught to do, is just put on your brave face, pull up your big girl panties, and, just show up for life. And that's what I did for the majority of my life until it all came crashing down.
Now, when you say it all came crashing down, what do you mean by that?
So let me go back to when I first was diagnosed with any mental illness. I've been misdiagnosed with a bazillion different things my entire life, chronic illness wise and mental health wise. But mental health came into the picture when I was in 8th grade. I was a competitive dancer. I was on a dance team, and I developed bursitis in my hip. And they basically were like, you have got to completely quit dancing, like cold turkey. And that shattered my world, because I was doing that pretty much 6 days out of the week was dancing. I traveled all over. I wanted to grow up to be a choreographer, and they were like, nope, you're done. I was like, Okay. This also, plus I'm getting ready to transition into high school, which itself has its own set of stressors, right? And so I went into a very, very deep, deep depression, the kind where I actually started to hear things that weren't there. So they diagnosed me with major depressive disorder with psychotic features. Then, also diagnosed with generalized anxiety, panic attacks. And that was basically my life until I went away to college for my first semester. And while I was there, I was getting straight A's. I was doing great, but I also found that I didn't really need to eat very much. I wasn't really sleeping. I thought I had superpowers. At one point, I told my friend, I think I could probably fly out your window. And I probably would have tried if she had not been like, oh, no, 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 you're not going to try that. So then I remember very clearly, I was sitting in the cafeteria with my friends eating lunch, and all of a sudden it was like everyone was far, far away. And it was like they were as if they were speaking to me in a tin can. And I was like, what is happening? And so I just remember like bursting into tears, all my friends going, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I am not okay. So they rushed me to the counseling office. The counseling office saw that my eyes, my pupils were hugely dilated. So they immediately called my parents, which they were 3 hours away, and said, you need to come get your daughter. She's very, very unwell. So they did. They took me to my psychiatrist. My psychiatrist said, well, with the severity of your depression, I had a feeling that this might happen. And so I'm diagnosing you with bipolar disorder. So that's kind of when things really took a turn because they thought that what happened to me in college was a mania. Put me on all kinds of different bipolar meds. Eventually, I was put on Depakote, which was one that worked, but a very common side effect to Depakote is that you gain a ton of weight. So I went from being what I look like now to eventually my highest weight was 265 pounds. And that was the result of all the medications I was on.
That is definitely a lot for somebody to deal with, especially, in your adolescence.
Yeah. And then the other really hard thing was that the psychiatrist couldn't guarantee that I would be well enough because all I had to do was go back and take my exams and I would have
Mhm.
had credits for that first semester. And he's like, I can't guarantee that you're going to be well enough to do that. So it was not my decision. My parents and my psychiatrist made it for me that they were completely pulling me out of school. So that entire first semester, I got no credits for. And that was something I was really angry about. Came home, transferred to a local school, and really struggled because I just had difficulty paying attention, reading books. And I had never experienced that before because I wasn't like the smartest kid in the world, but I was an AB student. I graduated high school with honors. And then I went on to graduate college with honors. And I really fought for those honors, I'll say. So I'm really proud of the fact that I graduated with honors.
And as you should be proud. Now, thinking about those experiences that you had, especially growing up, going to the counselor and how your parents had to support you, did you ever feel too much emotionally growing up?
See, that's an interesting question because as like I said, I was born with chronic illness. The way I remember my childhood is very different than the way my mom remembers it. And I'm
Mm.
extremely close with both my parents. Like we're best friends, always have been, always will be. So my childhood, the way I remember it is that Sarah is completely happy, fine, playing by herself, totally happy little kid, or crisis, crisis, danger, danger, alert, like, flashing sirens, she's in crisis, like get her to the hospital immediately. So I never learned what now I know is called emotional regulation. I never learned how to navigate like the bumps of life, of everyday life. It was either like, oh, I'm really, really happy, or oh my gosh, I'm in crisis. Hurry up, get me help immediately, or I'm going to die type of
It's,
thing.
it's either like, level 10, alert, alert, save
Yes.
me. I need somebody to help me now, or we're good.
Yes, exactly. I just remember always overanalyzing things or just being really hard on myself mostly. I'm like, why is it harder for me to do this now? Or why is it hard, just really beating myself up. And I can remember even sitting in class having a side effect to medication, and two of my classmates had to rush me to the hospital because I thought I was having a stroke. I lost complete use of my left arm. It was very scary. So either it was like I was a really good, again, really good mood, or it was like, oh my gosh, she's in crisis, go to the hospital. And that's basically how I remember growing up.
Thinking about that, that must have been kind of hard because I'm not too sure if any other student actually understood what you were going through or if you were like the only one. And I could imagine why that would be hard.
Love that you brought that up because when I was in high school and I was dealing with all of this, I transferred schools at one point because I was being bullied. And I remember trusting my best friend, telling her I'm dealing with some mental health issues. And she ended up telling some other people because, when you're in high school, promises don't really mean anything.
And kids
And
definitely gossip for sure.
yep. So it went around school that, I was the psycho kid and all this stuff. And I remember very clearly being on the phone with someone I thought was my friend, and they were going to the movies. And I said, "Oh, hey, can I tag along?" And she said, "No, I'm sorry, you can't." And I was like, "Why?" And she said, "Well, I'm afraid of you." That was the first time I'd ever heard something like that. And I was like, "Why are you afraid of me?" And she's like, "Well, you hear things that aren't there." And I was like, "Okay." But I was like, so I was like, "Let me get this straight." I was like, "You don't want to be my friend anymore because of something that is out of my control, right?" I love this
Okay.
cup because it reminds me of things that I can control and things I can't control. And that was something out of my control, but I didn't understand that point of view. Um,
Let's put this
and
into
actually,
perspective
like,
here. One of the things is the times were different. We're talking about the 80s and the 90s to where mental health was not viewed the same way as it is now, to where people weren't as open about it. You didn't talk about it and you were actually judged, and people would call you crazy, or anytime that you were different, you were just ostracized and treated differently.
yeah.
And thinking about your experience, I'm sorry you had to experience that. But it makes me think, what parts of yourself did you feel that you had to hide just to fit in?
Honestly, I don't, so I don't really have much of a memory, and that's a whole nother topic, but I don't really remember much of that. But other than the fact that I can remember clearly in middle school, I used to be part of a popular crowd. And then one day I went to sit down with my normal popular friends, and they said, "You're no longer welcome to sit with us." And I was just like, "Okay." So that was like the first time that I ever kind of felt being like excluded and not really understanding why. I was the class student treasurer. So people liked me, but that was the first time I felt like I wasn't good enough to sit with a certain group of people. And I can also remember being in the cafeteria, and this girl was wearing this purple shirt. I'm not going to say her name because she's still around. And I went, "Don't ever wear that color again. That is not a good color on you." And I remember every other girl at the lunch table going, like, "What? How dare, that's so rude." And I was like, "I'm just being honest." And I didn't understand why, like, people were like, they thought I was being rude. And I simply thought I was just doing her a favor saying, "That's not a good color on you. You should wear something else." And no, no, everyone thought I was so rude and mean. And I'm like, I really did not understand their point of view at all. Cause to me, I felt like I was doing her a favor. That was probably my earliest memories of not really fitting in. So once I got to college, I was a social work major. And every time I would watch the news, you would hear all these stories of murders and rapists and any kind of horrific criminal out there. And they'd be like, "Oh, this so and so had, mental illness, but specifically bipolar disorder." So I made it my personal mission as a social work student to tell everyone in my social work classes, not in my other ones, but just my social work classes, "Hi, my name is Sarah Palmer at the time, and I am bipolar. And none of you would know that unless I told you." And anytime I could write a paper, I would do it on the destigmatization of mental illness because that was my soapbox. And I wanted to prove everybody wrong. Like, what you see on the news is not everybody's experience. Not everybody doesn't take their meds or, goes and does crazy
So you
things
were
and
out
murders
there
people.
advocating and educating.
Yes. I really felt like that was my mission. And I almost would throw it in people's face because I'd rather get it over with and have them reject me right up front than me establish a friendship with them and then they find out and then they reject me. So it was a way of protection almost.
Protection, do you think that was a way of you avoiding, because I know masking can be pretty hard, it's really hard for people out there to pretend like I'm okay, when all actuality, you might not be okay. There might be physical symptoms that are going on. You might be hiding things that people don't see, and it gets really freaking tiring.
It
Um,
does.
was
And
that
that's why I feel so burnout now. I'm now 47 and I'm still trying to learn emotional regulation because I never learned that as a kid. And so it's really hard when later on in life to learn that, oh, you stubbed your toe, that's not the end of the world. To me it's like any type of stressor, I go into full blown crisis, anxiety attack, fetal position in my bed, crying over the tiniest little things because I never learned that that was a normal
the ebbs
bump
and
in the road.
flows? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of times people don't even talk about how intense masking can be. And my definition, when I think of masking, it's the character that I created of what I think a normal person is, and then me acting that out. Can you imagine if I was out there and I said, you know what? I'm going to talk like this every single day, and I'm going to do this for 3 and 4 hours a day. Yay, yay. That's going to be
And there are people
exhausting.
that do that.
Yeah.
Actually, I work with a kid that to this day, that's how he talks. He has autism and he's amazing, but that is how he chooses to talk. And he's 20 something now.
And then as soon as you're in your safe place, you go, everything's okay to, man, oh, today was a long day. I'm so glad that I could let my hair down and if imagine having it, and
Yeah.
it's more of an extreme example, but that would be exhausting just pretending to be something that you're not. And I feel like I'm not just going to limit this to women. I believe that some people get so good at masking that they lose themselves.
Yes, that is definitely my case because now I will say that after my second divorce, and I'm going to phrase this very strategically, I allowed him to take my identity. And that was because I was married for the second time 10 years and I became a mother and a wife and I let that consume me because he was busy doing his own thing. So I had to be the person that kept the family together. And when he decided to divorce me, it was like I don't know who I am anymore. I really didn't. And so that was and the other thing too is that, going through divorce and grieving that process, I didn't even have time to
Yes.
deal with all that because I had to like move in with my parents. I lost everything. My car, my family that I had built for 10 years. And so I would probably be homeless if my parents were not still alive. So and I'm really truly now just trying to discover who I am, what my core values are, because th like, I shaped them around who I was when I was with him and when I was with my daughters, and that all fell apart, so and now, like, we've been divorced 3 years, and I'm still trying to figure out who I am now.
Mm.
It's been extremely emotional.
I can only imagine how emotional that would be. And as far as the costs of, experiencing that and having that happen to you, it's a lot.
It is. And that's putting it very mildly because I always tell people I'm very transparent and I'm an open book because I don't want there to be a stigma around mental illness or any illness for that matter because it's real, it's out there, and so many people are dealing with it. So when I went through that second divorce, I needed a place, like a safe place to just vent about my experience. So
Mhm.
I started a faceless Instagram account. Nobody knew who I was and it was just called The Chronic Confessions. And that's how that was born. And it was just me without, a name, a face, anything, just talking about what I was going through. And what I realized very quickly was that there was a huge chronic illness population, especially on Instagram. And I was like, wow, I'm definitely not alone in any of this. And that really opened my eyes.
Can imagine how, because it sounds cliche, but the feeling of not being alone actually means something to people. Because, yes, you know that you're not alone, but until you actually experience it, it's hard to see the magnitude or the power that the weight of that actually holds. Because there's a
Yeah.
sense of community, there's a sense of belonging,
And
acceptance, and understanding.
yeah. And the thing though is that even though I know that, still when I'm going through my darkest days, I still feel very, very alone. And so what I'll do is I'll get on one of my social media platforms and talk because I'm going through a hard time. I need you to tell me this is okay and that I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be safe, because I'm an only child. I mean, I have a boyfriend that lives with me now, but if they're not here and I'm literally all by myself. And sometimes that's really scary when I'm going through something physical or something mental. There's no one
Right.
here. It's just me. So, and I think a lot of other people experience that too, that even though they may be in a house full of people, nobody else is going through what they are going through. And it is
Exactly.
extremely isolating
So,
and
like,
it's very
speaking for
lonely.
myself, sometimes there's situations to where I might be going through something, and I want to talk to somebody who has a similar experience, somebody from a similar background, a similar condition. And it's not that the people around me aren't helpful, and it's not that they may not be able to understand, but I want somebody who truly gets it. Let me, like, for example,
Yes.
I may never, not may, I will never understand what you or any other woman goes through because I am not a woman. That's something that won't happen. However, I am a human and I can relate to you on human to human level, but sometimes human to human level isn't enough. You want somebody that has the same experience as you, the same background as you, maybe the same chromosomes as you. Sometimes you need your community.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that's yeah. That's why I created one. So that I wouldn't be alone. And so others wouldn't be alone. But selfishly, and I tell my people this all the time, that I selfishly created the Chronic Confessions community for me because I was alone and I needed my people that got it to help me through a rough time. And then I realized that it was something bigger than I had ever dreamed or imagined.
It's funny that you say that because as a ADHD content creator, a lot of times I did not realize that when I'm creating content, like on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or something like that at Extrovergent, I did not realize that a lot of the times I was creating stuff for myself. Without knowing
Yeah.
it, I would go to therapy and there might be something going on, and then somehow I put it into a video. It's not always that way. And then as I'm reflecting on it and I'm looking at the comments and everything, I feel like it's helping me to become a better person because I don't want to be a hypocrite, or I want to help encourage other people where I think that I'm helping other people. But I mean this when I say that to my followers, you help me way more than I help you a lot of the times. And I'm
Yeah.
very appreciative of that. And I never would have thought of it that way until I experienced that.
Yeah, same here. So from Instagram, then I went to Facebook and created the community. I realized that, yeah, they're always there for me, and specifically like this one woman who has a very similar story to mine, and all her friends and family completely abandoned her because they just didn't want to hear her complaining. So I told her, I said, "Look, you can call me and just vent, and I will not give you any advice. I will just listen unless you ask for or say, 'What do you think about this?'" So literally for a half an hour, I put her on mute. And of course I was listening, but I was like getting ready for the day. And she just vented and let it all out. And then she would stop for a second and be like, "Are you there?" And I'd be like, "Yep," take myself off mute. And then for an entire hour, she just vented. This is when I really realized that this community was making a difference. Then a couple months later, she asked me for my address. I gave it to her. And right after Christmas, I received this package in the mail from her, and it was a few little odds and ends that she had scraped together to give me as a thank you gift. I never in a million years thought that she would do this. Is a woman who's literally living in a motel. I mean, so for her to pay to get me these little odds and ends and then ship them to me meant so much to me. And I just called and left her a message and was just like, "You have no idea how much that truly meant to me, that just listening to you really changed your day or your life or whatever it did for you." I mean, I had no idea that just listening to someone could really impact someone else's life. And so I love telling that story because words have power. And
Yes.
as someone who has been through a lot of trauma, both physical, mental, verbal, I will say that the emotional and verbal trauma that I've been to leaves the deepest wounds. And those are the ones that I'm still to this day trying to recover from. The physical ones usually heal, but it's those mental and emotional ones that just cut deep inside your soul, and you're just like, "How do I move past that?"
And and that's why community is always important because there was something that I was experiencing to where yes, there were people that I could have consulted with, but I wanted to talk to somebody who, had a similar background. And my stress watch said overloaded. Pay attention. And it was like that for hours, like 3, 4 hours. And I was not able to talk to anybody for a while. The interesting thing about that is once I was done talking to this person, it said great. Literally, just by having somebody listening and getting it
Right.
out made a huge difference. And it's interesting too that sometimes you have people who are going through very traumatic and bad experiences and they have the biggest smiles. So I had somebody that I was working with for a long time, and she was always uplifting me, always had a smile on her face until one day I was talking to her and she told me she has stage 3 pancreatic cancer and that it was some like gene mutation and that she was dying. But I never knew because she was always uplifting me. She was always speaking life into me when the life was being sucked out of her.
Right.
And it's one of those things to where I would have never known until she shared that with me.
Yeah, and that was
And
the whole reason why, yeah, I wanted everyone in my college classes to know this is also what, mental illness looks like. It looks like someone who's high functioning, high achieving, who's, graduating with honors and is literally like dying on the inside.
I'm looking right after my dad passed away in 2023. I'm looking at my text messages. She even was checking on me, even when she wasn't feeling good. She said, I know today may be a little bittersweet because your heart may be heavy, but know that the seeds that were planted in you manifested for the purposes because you, sir, are an outstanding present Black father, and I'm proud of you. Your daughter is blessed.
I do have to say that so, having a degree in social work, that it really filled my cup to help other people. But that kind of was a double-edged sword because um I my very first marriage was right out of college, and he was an abusive alcoholic, and and I felt a lot of shame for that because literally as I'm, getting my social work degree, I had to do a 3-month internship where I was counseling
Hmm.
women that were in domestic violent relationships and how to spot red flags, how to leave, all this stuff. I literally did that for 3 months, had to those giant 4-inch binders that, like back in the
Oh,
day,
yeah.
I had to read that whole training manual and then memorize it.
And you
And
had the
so for
attention
me
span to
to
do that too. You're better than me.
well, I don't anymore, but so then I also got really good at figuring out ways to study that worked for me. I crash course studied the last minute before a test, stayed up all night. So I went straight from getting that degree into a domestic violence marriage. And luckily, I was not the norm because
It's like, what is the norm now?
well, so they say that it usually no, but because they usually say that it takes a woman 7 times before she officially leaves for good. And I know that I left, I think 3 times,
Hmm.
and he'd always be like, "See you in 2 weeks." I'd always forgive him because there's the honeymoon period, whatever,
Right.
they, redeem themselves, and you're like, "Oh, well, I" and the thing was is because I had just graduated, I saw the potential in him, and I wanted everybody to see that too. And I just kept thinking, well, if I can reach him, then he'll be different. Let me fix him. Let me save him. Let me do my social work magic on him. No, I finally had enough and was like, I literally left. I think it was like in the middle of the night with the dog in my pajamas with my purse and my keys in my car. That's all I had to my name, and went to my parents' house and in the middle of the night and just said, I can't do this anymore. I have to tell you guys what's really been going on.
And that was
I,
very brave of you.
and it was really hard because I hid that from everyone. No one knew what was going on. And that was something that I really had to work through in therapy. And still to this day, as you can tell, I'm kind of getting like, a little emotional, just the shame of like, how did I not see that myself? Like I literally like was teaching other women to spot the signs. And then so that's still something that I have to like give myself grace and forgive myself because there's something about the cycle of abuse where if you had met him, he would say all the right things. And but that's what they do is they're so charming and they know exactly what to say to suck you in. And then once you're inside their grip, then their real personality comes out. But by that time, they've already isolated you from your friends and family, and you're kind of stuck. And you're like, I don't know where to go. You've left me with only you. So what do I do?
Yeah, you have some
But
people who they get out there and they say all the right things. They know how to woo you. They know how to charm you. And one of the best pieces of advice that I share with a lot of people that my wife got from a family member is to get to know people through the seasons and get to know them through the seasons multiple times because you don't know what their habits are. You don't know how they are. You don't know what their true colors are. Because how many times have you had new family members or friends or acquaintances? And as time goes on through the months and the years, and you're just like, I did not know this person, or you discover that that
yeah,
person is a habitual liar
yeah,
or they're just a jerk and they're not a good person. They don't respect people or anything like that. But if you would have taken the time to know them through the seasons and maybe sometimes a couple of seasons that may have come to light. Not saying that'll fix everything or not saying
right.
that you'll know, but at least you can kind of protect yourself.
Yeah. And I think actually it's interesting because I was watching Garth Brooks on Oprah And he was talking about when he first got married that the reason they got married was because it was the next right step. And I was like, finally, someone gets it because that's exactly what my first husband and I did. We had been dating for a year and it was kind of like, well, what do we do now? We were like, oh, well, I guess we're supposed to get married. So that's what we did. We were so dumb and young. But yeah, I loved that Garth Brooks came on Oprah and publicly said, don't just marry someone because you think it's the next right thing. You need to know that person inside and out, and you truly have to want to spend the rest of your life with this person. So I loved that he came out publicly and said that because that made me feel less like I was stupid or naive. And it wasn't even like I was a big Garth Brooks fan, but it was like somebody
Like
that
Garth
everyone loved and
Brooks.
respected,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
and was like, wow, he made a mistake and he's owning it. So it gave me permission to forgive myself.
And sometimes that's the hardest thing to do because we're very hard on ourselves,
Yes.
whether it's just from our situations, our trauma, or just our neurodivergence for those of us who are. It can be hard to give yourself grace. Easier said than done because
Yes.
sometimes we do have a lot of internalized shame that kind of eats us up with our internal battles. And while we do have the smile on our face and everybody thinks we're okay, it's like, hi, that's a mask.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of my content now, if you see from it, like from the beginning to now, I'll do it like when I first wake up in the morning and my hair looks all crazy. And I'm like, okay, in fact, one of my favorite ones I did on TikTok recently, my hair was like all curly and crazy. And I was like, okay, let's just get past the fact that I look like Mufasa and Simba had a baby right now. Okay. Like, I'm like, I'm just gonna like, I just
Not
need to tell you
Mufasa
something
and
before I
Simba
forget.
had a baby.
Seriously, because my hair's naturally curly, and it was like, and I was like, I've been camping all weekend. Okay, people, just get over it. Now let's move on into why I'm talking to you.
We
But
listen and we don't judge.
yeah. So now I'm doing a lot more content where I'm not, where I look like this and it's so funny because when people see me out and about, they're always like, "Oh, you're so dressed up." Well, it's because
What?
most of the time, like, yeah, I stay around in my pajamas all day. So when I go out, I want to look good because I don't get out very often. I'm either sick or, so
And I
yeah,
think people can appreciate the raw authenticity. And that's one thing
absolutely.
that my page is built off of realness and this podcast in authenticity. There was one time I was doing a video and I was just not having a good day. And this was the video. It was something like this. Listen, I don't have anything to talk about today because today is not a good day. So, this video right here, this is the content. This is what you get. I don't have anything else to give, so this is the video. And then
Yeah.
in the comment section, "Oh my god, you're so brave. Like you got up there and you weren't feeling good and you still made the you made the time to make a video." And I'm just like, "What? I literally just made a video saying I had nothing to give and this is what you get with no substance." But I guess I was giving something.
Yeah, because a lot of people relate to that. I do because actually that was one of my best videos that I made on TikTok. It was when I had a horrific migraine. I'm laying in bed and I said, you know what? If all you did was exist today, that's enough. That was more than enough because some people don't even get through the day existing,
Right.
So I said, so if all you did was lay in bed and just survive and exist in the world, that's enough. And I'm so proud of you. And still today, people comment or like on that video and they're like, thank you. They needed that validation. Somehow, some stranger on TikTok gave them validation to just exist and not perform or do an action or whatever. Just literally lay there and survive the day.
But you'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but some other people may be surprised that the relationships that you build online, regardless if it goes beyond a keyboard or not, can actually mean something to people. I have well over 6 million views on all platforms. And when people reach out to me and they talk about how their video resonated with themselves or how they can get through their day, I was talking to my godmother the other day, and I was telling her about starting Hidden in Plain Sight, and well, she already knows about my social media stuff. And she said, "Do you know the magnitude of what you're actually doing? You may think of it as simple conversation or as simple videos, but people out here are actually struggling. They're actually going through things, and you are bringing some dark things to the light." And the thing is, it's just like I'm not romanticizing different things too. I'm showing real perspectives and helping people feel seen.
Yeah.
And those are really deep things. And it is a big deal. You might not see how big of a deal that is, but you're doing some really good work here.
Yeah, and that honestly, that's hard. Now I'm starting to like take credit for that, or I guess that would be the right word to say, or to validate myself for that. But for a long time, I didn't. It's interesting that your godmother said that because my uncle, who I'm extremely close with, my Uncle Tim, I love you. He's always been there for me, and so I've been a huge. Actually, here I'll show you in case people don't know. This woman right here is one of my all-time biggest heroes, Frida Kahlo, because of what she experienced in her life and how she overcame. And I love her. And my uncle, I was really good at Spanish, took a whole bunch of Spanish classes. They even wanted me to major in Spanish.
Bien.
And if I have one regret in life, it's that I didn't do that. But I can still go back and take classes. But um, my point is that my uncle is fluent in Spanish, goes to Spain all the time with his partner. And he recently just sent me a letter, and I still haven't responded to it because it was about Frida Kahlo, and he's seen me talk more openly, being on other podcasts or on social media and stuff, talking about my story. And he sent me this letter about one of her quotes that I'm going to butcher the Spanish, so I'm not going to try and say it, but basically it was, "Why do I need feet when I have wings to fly?" I'm going to get choked up saying it. So see, I still, and he said, "I'm really seeing you spread your wings and flying." And for him to say that to me and to compare me to like one of my biggest heroes growing up was so just meant, because I don't see myself that way. I just see myself as like, some white suburban girl who, started a free support group selfishly because she needed a place to belong. And now I'm helping so many people that I probably don't even realize the magnitude of the people I'm helping. And so for him to recognize that and to send me that and to say like, spread your wings and fly, and really, it was just like really hard for me to say, "You're right. I'm making a difference. It may be a small difference, it may be a big difference, but it's a difference and it's a positive one." And anyway, so yeah,
You're not just
it's hard.
spreading
It's
your
really
wings and
hard for
flying.
me to take compliments.
You're not just spreading your wings and flying, you're also soaring through the peaks and
Yes.
valleys and the mountains and through the cities and everything too. Sarah, you are soaring. And even if some of those days where you may not feel worthy, you may not feel like you're where you want to be in life, you're still flying.
Right. And that's why I get on social media and I tell my story, because I always tell people, if I can do it, you can do it too, and it's not. And I know that I'm blessed because my parents are so supportive of me, and a lot of people don't, maybe have that same background. But to me, trauma is trauma, no matter what kind of trauma you experienced. And for me, it was a lot of medical trauma that I went through at a very young age that led into more trauma throughout my life. But um, yeah, there's that part of me that still sees myself as I'm worthless, I'm nothing, because I've been in relationships where I was told that repeatedly. And so I've had to, so it's interesting that you were talking about the inner critic. So when I got diagnosed with ADHD, I found this ADHD community, and Jamie Cotino, who has her own podcast, love you, Jamie. She was really instrumental in helping me to adapt this new way of thinking. And so she was talking about the inner critic, and she's like, "I want you to name it, name her or him, whoever it is." And I still teach people this trick to this day because it's so helpful. And so I was like, I don't know what to name my inner critic. So she's like, "Okay, fine, we're going with Olga." So I was like, all right. So I look in the mirror and I look at myself, but it's Olga. And I say, "All right, Olga, look, you are doing the best you can with what you have right now. So you shut up." And when I do that, it like empowers me to like take back my authority and be like, "Okay, yeah, I can handle this. Let's go do this. Let's go seize the day." And so I've done that with other people when they're having a panic attack or whatever. I'll take them in the bathroom and I'll be like, "All right, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I want you to, like, whoever that is that's telling you all the terrible things about yourself in your head, name that person. Now look at yourself in the mirror, talk to that person as if they're a completely different version, and tell them whatever you need to tell them so that it quiets your mind." And it is so helpful.
I think I'm gonna name my brain Rufus. Listen here, Rufus.
Yeah,
Cut your
seriously.
crap, okay? We don't have time for this.
Exactly. And so that's why I still have this card my mom got me that it says something like, "You're doing great, so pull up your big girl panties and move on," something like that,
Hey,
and I was like, "Yeah."
those affirmations really matter. Now, you talked about being diagnosed with ADHD. Was that later in life?
Yes. So I love this story because, like I said, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 18. And until the age of 41, that was my identity. And I was working with an event planner at the time, and her wife walked in, very first time meeting me. And she dropped her bags when she walked in, 'cause saw me and her wife sitting there talking to one another and went, "Oh, great. Now there's two of you." And we both looked at each other like, "What is she talking about?" And so she was like, "What? You don't see it?" And we were like, "What?" And she goes, "Do you mean to tell me you're not also ADHD like so and so?" And I was like, and I was almost like offended. I was like, "No, I am bipolar. Thank you very much." Like as if that was a better.
Excuse me. How
So she
dare
was like,
you?
"Oh, right, exactly." Yeah, seriously, it was the funniest thing because I was like, "No, I am not." And also, the other funny thing is that I had been a behavior analyst for 13 years. And so a lot of the children that I worked with, the little bouncing boys, the ADD, that was all I ever knew. Like the hyperactive little boys that I worked with for 13 plus years. So I was like, I'm not AD what and then I was like, what is ADHD? Like so then literally it's like when you buy a new car and you see it everywhere, all of a sudden on social media, everybody in my age group were like, "I just got diagnosed with ADHD. I just got diagnosed with ADHD. I just got diagnosed with ADHD." And I was like, "Huh, there's something going on. Like, there's something in the water here."
Hmm.
So I talked to my
Hmm.
entire care team and said, "Do you think possibly I should be reevaluated? I mean, your brain can change a lot between the age of 18 and 41." And they were like, "Absolutely. It couldn't hurt. Why not? Go for it." So during COVID, I went through a reevaluation and the guy was like, "You are not bipolar." And the interesting thing was
Wow.
is that so many doctors had told me throughout my life, not psychiatrists, just other doctors, specialists, saying, "You do not present as a typical bipolar patient." And so sure enough, I was ADHD combined.
So, what emotions come with finally understanding yourself later in life?
Well, like I said, I do a lot of my own research and I went hyper focused into like, okay, what is ADHD? What does this look like for women? What does this mean for me? And I hear a lot of people that are late diagnosed, men specifically, who say all of a sudden they feel this sense of relief, like, oh, finally, my life makes sense. But for me, my very first reaction was anger, rage. I mean, I was so furious.
Really?
Why didn't these people catch it earlier? I mean, why did I have to suffer for 28 years thinking this is who I was, gaining so much weight? Because literally, as soon as they took me off the bipolar meds, I dropped all the weight.
Angry. Was there also a sense of grief there too?
Eventually, yeah, after I got over the anger, then it was like I was grieving because I didn't know who I was anymore. I was like everything that I had learned up until that point was not truly who I was. And so I really had to do a lot of therapy and just a lot of self-reflection and journaling to figure out who am I now?
Fast forwarding, what changed after diagnosis for you?
Well, definitely med change, huge med change, and then a whole full body transformation. Plus, then I was going through divorce right after that. So when I say I lost my identity, I also lost my family. I lost everything. And so I really had to build from the ground up. And I'm still doing that to this day. So I'm 47 and I'm still trying to figure out who is Sarah Buckley? What does she stand for? What does she want to be when she grows
Right.
up?
And sometimes diagnosis doesn't change who you are. It changes how harshly you judge yourself.
Yeah. And for me, it was like I had built this whole identity around being bipolar and who I was within that space. And now it was like, okay, now at the age of 41, I have to figure out an entire new way of thinking and an entire new way of coping, a entire new way of like, managing stress. And it was so overwhelming. So, yeah, there was a lot of grief there because it was just like, I don't know how to live anymore. I don't know how to cope. I don't know how to manage this. I don't know who to talk to. And the very first time someone said to me, "You're too much," I was like, "Ooh, okay." I think 2 years into my diagnosis, someone was like, "You're too loud," or "You're too sensitive," or "You're too needy," or whatever. And Elise Myers, well-known content creator for being ADHD, that was one of the things that she said. She was like, "If I'm too much, go find less." And I have to constantly remind myself of that when people say you're too anything. I'm like, then you know what? I'm not the person for you. Go find less because I'm not going to change me so that it accommodates you.
Understandable,
And that's hard because I've lost a lot of friends.
which sucks because nobody wants to lose friends. But hey, sometimes we outgrow them too. But moving forward, years later after being diagnosed, what does emotional safety look like now?
That's really hard for me to answer because I don't know that I found it yet.
Oh, okay.
Really, when I say I've been through every type of therapy out there, I truly have. I mean, and I'm talking even the alternative, like I've been through hypnosis and, like Reiki, seriously, all kinds of stuff, EMDR, DBT. And I gained skills through all of that, but still, I don't feel that I know what emotional regulation is. I feel like I'm either extremely happy, like I am right now, or it's like I'm bawling my eyes out and I'm crawl up in the fetal position. So I don't really know what it feels like to be safe in my body. And so many therapists have said, okay, I'm going to, take you through this exercise. Tell me what you're feeling. I don't know how to describe that. People are like, well, where are you feeling it in your body? And I'm like, I don't know. And
I
then that
don't
makes me feel
know.
like I'm flawed because, well, other people can say, oh, I feel it in my shoulders or I feel it in my stomach. I, I don't know how to answer that question.
You
So
sound like
I
me in
haven't learned.
you sound like me in emotions. What are you feeling today? I don't know. This right here, I
Yeah.
don't know. Do you feel like do you feel like you're unmasking now finally?
Yes. Yes, and that's been really freeing. I love that you brought that up because like I said, like I've been doing a lot more content. I don't wear makeup or my hair's all wackadoodle or whatever. And actually there's a girl in my support group who's doing this vulnerability 365 challenge where she's removing her mask for an entire year and doing content every day. And it really, really inspired me. So when I saw her do the first day, I said, would you please post this in the community? Because I think other people would really resonate with this other than just myself. So at first she was hesitant, but then she did it. And I will tell you, I then thanked her and said, okay, just for today, I want all of you to post the most real, authentic, genuine version of you, the unpolished version, the unmasked version. What does that look like? Take a picture and put it on this post. And so many people did. And it was this beautiful declaration of this is me and this is the real me. And it was just like it was really beautiful, and it's one of my favorite moments of that community, of taking off the mask and just being you,
N
and it being okay.
and not just taking off the mask, you are more than your traumas and your experiences. You're also more than your diagnosis. Look at me, Sarah. Here's the thing. You are deeply empathetic, emotionally intuitive, creative. Think about the stuff that you went through at school with your ex-husband. You showed that you are resilient, you are thoughtful, you are compassionate, passionate, highly self-aware. And we've talked about you being sensitive. And sensitivity isn't weakness. Sometimes it's awareness. Sarah, those things that I mentioned, they are you. They're not just you, but they're also the women that are listening to this. That is also you too.
So thank you for saying that because that's exactly why I wanted to come on this podcast because Mel Robbins said that we are known as the lost generation. You were either misdiagnosed as a child or you were just lost and you weren't diagnosed until later in life. So I fell in the first category where I was misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder and then later on said, I don't think this is me and got diagnosed with the correct diagnosis. Or there's people that just fell through the cracks their entire life until they got into adulthood and then were like, I'm not managing my life very well. And then sought a diagnosis. So I really wanted to come on here and just give women that have been through a lot, like me, who maybe fall in that lost generation category, that you can move on. You can have a stable life. You can enjoy happiness and you can learn, the coping skills and move on with your life, whatever that is. And so many times I've had to pivot just because of like I said, I have, chronic illness as well. So there's things in my life that I've enjoyed doing, but then it's like I'm not physically able to do those things anymore. But I always
Mhm.
think I have my own little fun little pity party for a couple days and then I pick myself back up and go, okay, what are we going to do with what I have right now? And so I love that you said the word resilient because every single person, even the doctors, say that I'm resilient. And that's kind of my hashtag. And if I were to ever get a tattoo, which I wouldn't, but not that I judge that, it's just I've been through too much pain. I don't want to physically pay someone to hurt me. that it would say hashtag resilient AF right here, because that's so me. Like, I get knocked down a bazillion times, sometimes even within one
But
day,
you
but
get
I
back
always
up
pick myself back up.
again.
Yeah, always.
Get
And I
back up
love that
again.
Japanese proverb, that says fall down 7, stand up 8. That's my
We
life.
fall down, but we get up. So, what would you say to the woman listening who spent years believing something was wrong with her?
So I'm kind of in this era now in my life where even my mom finally has acknowledged that I am ADHD, because even after I got diagnosed, had the medical diagnosis, like, she still was like, I think you're still bipolar. So I would just really say, if you feel that something is off, you really have to advocate for yourself, and it's exhausting, but it's so worth it. And I even think that I may have ADHD and not just ADHD. But to me, it's not worth it to go through the diagnosis process again, and also with some of my chronic illness things too. I'm not seeking any more diagnoses. And I'm not saying that that's wrong if you want to do that. But for me, I'm trying to move beyond the diagnosis. I changed my bio, and now my bio is like, I'm not defined by my diagnosis. Because I think for so many of us that deal with mental illness or chronic illness, you get put in a category. And then your identity, at least for me, becomes shaped around whatever your diagnosis is. And I want people to see me for me. I encourage you to just do whatever your gut tells you to do. And so if you feel that something's off and people are saying, oh, it's all in your head, or go see a psychiatrist, if you truly feel like this is something different, I feel weird and this is not my norm, find a doctor who will listen. Any doctor. There are some really good doctors still out there that will listen and will believe you. Do not give up. And you're not alone.
Sometimes you might have to talk to multiple people, whether it's a doctor, a
Oh,
therapist.
yeah.
Sometimes the first one isn't always the best one for you. But Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your story and your experiences and your insight with us today. I think one of the biggest takeaways from this conversation is that so many women spent years believing there was something wrong with them, when in reality, they were navigating a world that didn't fully understand how their brains work. A diagnosis, it doesn't change who you've always been. It doesn't suddenly make you more worthy, more capable, or more valuable. But what it can do is replace confusion with understanding, shame with compassion, and self criticism with self acceptance. If you're listening today and parts of this conversation felt familiar, I hope you know this. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not failing at life. And you certainly are not alone. And no matter where you are in your journey, whether you're diagnosed, questioning, learning, or simply trying to understand yourself better, give yourself permission to be curious, to grow, and to show yourself the same compassion you freely give to others.
Amen. Yes,
Thank
that
you for
right there.
joining us for Hidden in Plain Sight.
Thank
Remember
you.
to give yourself grace, be kind to yourself, and until next time, remember to love yourself for just the way that you are. Have a good day, friend.